tonight I'm real excited to have some fantastic women that are going to give you all kinds of good stuff. I'm going to turn it over to Michelle T., who is the author of some of my favorite books, including Valencia, The Chelsea Whistle, Rose of No Man's Land. She's also an editor of some really fantastic books that, if you haven't already, you should check out. And she's going to tell you a little bit about herself and our other guests, and hopefully share some revealing anecdotes about the sister spit of the past and sister spit the next generation. So turn off your cell phones. The emergency exits are at the back, the way you came in, and here's Michelle T.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming. This is so glamorous. Darren asked me to say some stuff about Sister Spit. I think the first thing to say is that we don't normally perform in such glamorous environs, so it's really exciting. Sister Spit started in the 90s in San Francisco. It began as a weekly all-girl open mic, and it was happening when spoken word was sort of really exploding, and the poetry slams hadn't happened yet, but they were just getting started, like just about to. And in San Francisco, there were tons of open mics, and you could go to them every night of the week, and a lot of people did, but they were super dudey, and there were all these dudes who thought they were Henry Rollins, and they'd take their shirts off and like beat their chests and read like kind of bad Bukowski ripoff poetry. And me and Cindy Anderson, who's the poet that I started Sister Spit with, we would go to those places because we liked to get drunk and get in fights with those guys. But we realized we're in San Francisco, there's tons of girls, there's tons of writers. Why aren't there more girls here? Because who wants to sit through that shit? That's why. So we started Sister Spit. And in fact, there were tons of girls who came and read, and it was really fun. We did it for 2 years until all of a sudden, like, poets stopped coming, and all these girls with acoustic guitars started coming. So we knew it was dead, so we stopped doing it. But then in the 90s, I had a bunch of friends that were in bands, just like little punk bands, and they got to go on tour across the US and have all these adventures. And I was jealous, like poets are always jealous of people in bands. So I was like, well, why don't we try to do that? So we did, and we took a bunch of people. On the first tour, Eileen Myles came with us, which I couldn't believe she trusted us with her life like that. I felt like we didn't know what we were doing. We didn't know if we would go places and we'd show up and no one would be there. And in fact, it was pretty successful. I mean, everyone made $80 at the end of the month, but I couldn't believe we made anything and put gas in the van and had a really good time. So that was really fun. We did that for 3 years and then got burnt out. And last year I started, after 10 years passing, and there's this whole new crop of really amazing writers and performers who would be the people that would come on Sister Spit. I started thinking, oh God, I gotta do Sister Spit again and take these people on the road. So we went on 2 tours last year. We're gonna go on another tour in 2009. And the tours in the 90s were very scandalous, it's true. If you want scandal, I think the biggest scandal I can give you was when the girl who was driving the van was fisting another girl sitting beside her in the van. That was the most scandalous thing that happened on the tour. The new tour, I feel bad for the younger poets because it's much nicer. Like we perform in universities and we stay in hotels and not sleeping in people's bathrooms and stuff like that. So nothing that scandalous happened, but I felt like it was up to the younger people to provide themselves with their own scandal. I couldn't really do that for them. So maybe Cristy Road will provide a scandalous story when she gets up here. So just to let you know who's coming up after me, the next performer is going to be Cristy Road, and she is the author and the artist of the book Indestructible. She has a new one coming out that she's both the illustrator and the writer of, called Bad Habits, and you've probably seen her artwork all over the place. It's very iconic, and I bet you'll recognize her style. And then after that is Eileen Myles, the best writer in the whole world. And she's the author of countless books of poetry, most recently Sorry Tree, which is amazing. She's written the short story collection, the Chelsea Girls, and she's also written Cool for You, which is an amazing novel, and she's just incredible, so be excited. Now I'm gonna read. And I'm nervous because this is like this weird, okay, what is this? I'm reading, it is a fictional memoir with an unreliable narrator named Tova. I think that's all you need to know. And she started out talking about her exes, and that one reminds her of a nightmare that she had where like it was this shapeshifter, and if you looked at it out of the side of your eye, it always looked different. Lance was born a girl and now he looks like Johnny Depp, which he hates because he knows that he doesn't really look like Johnny Depp. Johnny Depp is the #1 most gorgeous man in the whole world. So whenever anyone says that to him that he looks like Johnny Depp, he knows what they're really saying is you sort of resemble Johnny Depp, only not as hot. And so Lance is insulted. I was glad he told me about this right away, like on our second date, because he looks so much like Johnny Depp, I probably would have mentioned it at some point. Even my primary ex, Raphael, called me at some point to tell me that he was complaining to his best friend, oh, Tova's new boyfriend is so ugly, he looks just like Johnny Depp. There was a pause on the phone because I didn't answer. Get it, Raph said? Johnny Depp's not ugly. Yeah, I said. Why is everyone so crazy? Lance is very sensitive. He's hands down the most sensitive person I ever dated. I thought I was sensitive, and I am. I am so sensitive I've cried 3 times today, and it's not even 4 o'clock yet. But whoa, Lance is tender. When we were having our last fight, our breakup fight, I was saying to him, Lance, it's totally okay to be angry and to feel anger. And if you need to like stomp around and break a bottle, it's totally cool and okay. You just can't bring it to me when we're fighting. I thought I had done so good. Everything was easier because he had just gotten off a plane, and he's also the most scared to fly person I've ever met, so he takes shitloads of Klonopins as his best friend sends him in the mail from New York. Our breakup fight was so sweet and cozy because Lance was all doped up and lying sprawled on his bed, in his room, which was a very calming place to be due to Lance's interest in aesthetics. It was very pine cone in the forest, staghorn, pussy willow, old and metal things with a touch of rust, earth tones. He kept it clean, and despite the multitude of vintage milk glass and fuzzy dead bumblebees and little vials and bits of nest and whatnot, the room did not feel cluttered. I know that everyone has essential goodness because the Buddhist books I read and read and read and hope that they will stop me from crying 3 times a day say so. And I believe that Lance has this essential goodness and that he showed it to me at the beginning of our relationship, if you can call a scant 4-month thing a relationship. And that's why I fell in love with him. And even though I think that this preoccupation with aesthetics is partly what makes Lance such an insufferable, pretentious snob, it is also a channel for his essential goodness to come through. So being in his room didn't feel rotten, even though it was becoming more and more clear, the more and more he talked, that I was going to have to break up with Lance if he wasn't beating me to it. I thought I was doing so good at breakup fighting. I was hardly cutting Lance off at all, probably because he was so doped up and slow. The fight wasn't having that rising, spinning, spiraling, panicked quality that got me all riled up, and then I can't stop talking and butting in and cutting off. I hate it about myself. I talked about it in therapy to my therapist Lila, who I imagine to be a forest creature, who lives in a glen of elves, her people, and keeps her therapist clothing, baggy comfortable pants, round comfortable shoes, a loose comfortable shirt, and a strand of beads with a spiritual charm that sits above her clavicle. She keeps it in a hollowed out log at the edge of the woods. Lila said I needed to remember that I valued hearing what Lance had to say, that I valued being a good listener to Lance. I was saying this to myself that night at the breakup fight. It's important to be a good listener to Lance. I was wearing a green wool skirt with box pleats that stopped mid-calf and a pair of gray tights with a weird plasticky hole in the knee from where I dripped a drip of crazy glue and it ate right through the fabric. I'd been crazy gluing sequined leaves onto the cover of the last mix CD I would ever make Lance. It was called We Have the Stars, We'll Have the Trees, which was from the PJ Harvey song Good Night, and was also from the love dreams we'd spun together, how we were going to move away to the woods and have babies and French bulldogs, and Lance would build an environmentally friendly patchwork cabin that would be so magical I wouldn't even care that I'd left all my friends and my hard-earned livelihood to run away with a 25-year-old who looked like Johnny Depp, and fucked me so good I sounded like PJ Harvey when I came, specifically like PJ Harvey in the song Snake from the 4-track demo CD. Lance noticed the hole in my tights and touched it with his finger, which was long and elegant. I would compliment his graceful hands, and he would say, it's because I'm a woman. And I would crack up forever, because that was the sort of thing that would just enrage my primary ex, Raph. And it felt so good to be with someone who wasn't upset that they weren't born a man. Lance was happy to have been born a female, and was happy to be male now, but don't call him a man, because he can't relate. Lance touched the hole in my tights with his womanly man finger and asked, what's that? Because my skin was so pale white against the tights, it looked like some weird maggot on my leg. That's my skin, I told him. He was all doped up, so we tripped on that for a minute, and then we went back to fighting. Lance is very, very dark-skinned Italian, and if you put him out in the sun, he just gets darker. And he works out in the sun all day, in other people's gardens. Plus, he had just spent the past 4 days ignoring my phone calls and text messages so he could be in the moment with his recent ex-date at her family's palatial home in San Diego, where there was a swimming pool and 2 separate hot tubs, one regular, one saltwater, and one of those Michael Jackson-style home movie theaters that are full-on motherfucking movie theaters. Every night the girl's mother would come around and say, who wants margaritas? And every night Lance apparently did, and they would all drink festive San Diegoan cocktails made with top-shelf alcohols. Lance was there with his ex-date because she was having some sort of surgery on her mouth and was freaked out, so he said he'd come with her and sit on the floor while she had her operation, and he did. I know this sounds impossible, to actually sit on the floor of an operating room during a surgery, but Lance has that sociopathic charm that allows him to get all sorts of things that people don't want to give him. He was supposed to be with me that weekend at a whatever reading I was doing at some women's celebration on a river up north, but then his ex-date went and bought him the plane ticket, and what could he do? Because he'd promised, and it was surgery versus an admittedly whatever reading, and I like to be a super good girlfriend, you know? Like not even caring that Lance and the girl used to be dates, not caring that they still hung out all the time and smoked shitloads of pot together, something I can't share with Lance, as smoking pot makes me realize the entire world is made of plastic and lies, and I freeze up and talk crazy talk. I didn't even care that they sometimes fell asleep in the same bed because I am such a good girlfriend. Why would I want to oppress Lance in his relationships with other people? I wanted Lance to be free, and to always return to me, saying shit like, you make me feel so free, but I always just want to return to you because you're the best one. He really did say that part about me being the best one. He said it in my bedroom when we were making out on my bed. He said, you're the best one. And it filled me with such sweet joy to hear it, because I knew it. I knew I was the best one. And my primary ex, Raph, had so profoundly forgotten that I was the best one that he had left me to be with an incredibly substandard girl who liked to play records and be popular, and who needed to be shown how to apply her foundation with a makeup sponge badly. I had been so heartbroken over the fact that after 8 years, Raph could just forget that I am the best one and take up with this substandard girl and her crusty face. That hearing my bestness confirmed by the young Johnny Depp lookalike filled me with a joy like the sun cracking through clouds and filling the sky with thick rays of godlight, accompanied by a chorus of angels crooning, ah. Of course, Lance would too eventually forget that I am the best one, leaving me alone in my poor little mind where I am forced to process not one but 2 shitty breakups. To have crazy internal arguments with not one but 2 shitty exes. To have endless nightmares starring not only the 2 toxic trans males, but their ingenues, the record-playing aspiring popular girl and the rich girl with the wounded mouth. All of us together, snug in my obsessive head. I just want to tell you what Lance objected to during that final argument, and then I'm out of here. I have things to do. I'm drinking magical coffee from a sack that has sacred wishes scrawled all over it by my friend Becky, who loves me platonically. My 1 pound sack of coffee reads thusly, Tova, have one for me, happy B-Day. Go, 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 everything is faster, better, sexier with coffee. Organic road warrior, more books, more shows, more hot dates, more spiritual awakenings. Like many ex-addicts, Becky is on a spiritual path. I am too. We go to spiritual meetings together with a bunch of people and listen to them talk about their spiritual awakenings and how amazing it is that they don't get fucked up anymore. My primary ex, Raph, goes to these meetings too with his new girlfriend, who won't let him call her girlfriend, even though they've been hitting it for 6 whole months. And even as I type this, they are on a plane together, flying to the East Coast so that Raph can meet her family. Oh, sorry, it's not so that Raph can meet her whole family. It just happens that it's her dad's birthday and they're both going to be there, and Raph, her non-boyfriend, will get to meet her entire wealthy New England family. Raph told me about this trip and then followed up very quickly with the whole she's not my girlfriend speech, which ended with the line, I can leave whenever I want. But when isn't that the case? If you can believe it, Lance took issue as a trans male with me suggesting that, in his anger, he would maybe enjoy smashing a bottle or 2. Remember when I said that to him? I had even prefaced it with using my own emotional shortcomings as an example. I get hysterical. I affirmed my right to become hysterical, my right to weep for 1,000,000 hours and cry until my eyes have bags only a surgeon could remove. I was being dramatic. I said, this is all okay, but I can't bring the hysteria to you, Lance. And Lance could go smash a bottle, but could not bring the anger to me. Look who's having an adult relationship. Look at me go. But no, it was horribly offensive to suggest that Lance, as a trans male, would break a bottle. He would never break a bottle. That is so not him. It's like I don't even know him to say something like that. And plus, it's so offensive and problematic because he's trans, and everyone wants to think trans men are super angry and smashing bottles everywhere, and it's just really not cool to make a characterization like that. Oh boy, I thought, this is not going to work. It's just not. Don't think about how good it feels to have him slam you up against a bedroom wall like a kid on a roller coaster. Whee! No, like Fay Ray in King Kong's hand, sexy and gripped in the palm of a beast. Don't think of the thin red marks you already let him cut into your body, pale shadows on your thigh, and one still angry on your right tit. Don't think about how he touches your hand and brings it down between your legs, gently, so you can feel his wrist slick inside you and you can gasp, oh my God, what is this body of mine? How is it capable of doing these things? Amazing. It must be him, it must be him, it must be him. He is Cinderella, sliding perfect into the shining satin pump of my cunt. You are the one. Think instead about this craziness, these arguments, how when you argue about nothing, there will always be arguments because everything is nothing. I read Buddhism. Buddhism is all about the essential nothingness of everything. This is just not going to work. There are 2 Lances, essential goodness Lance and then the other Lance that observed so coldly and critiqued and judged and turned sour and mean and denied it, all the love gone away. If only I could have mastered how to stay very still and gaze at him with my periphery eyes, maybe I would have been able to know in advance and would not have been so knocked around and scared all the time, more and more scared, which only leads to being more and more scared. Read any Buddhist, they'll tell you. That's why Lance is like my nightmare. Also because of his face, how he almost looked like 2 people. On MySpace he looked like one and in person another. I know this is true for everyone on MySpace, but with Lance it was deeper, more, stranger. Once I even wondered if he was the boy from MySpace. Maybe he was a charismatic sociopath that had killed the real Lance and had manipulated everyone in poor dead Lance's world to overlooking their nagging sensation that something wasn't right. But then Lance would turn, and with my periphery eyes, I could see it, the face of the boy in the MySpace pictures. Or I would look at the MySpace pictures, squint my eyes, and there, the real-life Lance would pop out of his face. Oh, it is so exhausting. Keeping up with people, their twists and turns and tricks. I'm done with it. I'm done with my coffee, and now we'll go downstairs to buy cigarettes at the liquor store on the corner. When I gave my last pack away to Ernest, who was visiting from Los Angeles and also getting out of a million-year relationship, Becky said, "You'll just buy another pack." "Nuh-uh," I said, offended at his lack of faith in me. "Because I'm not heartbroken, so I'm not going to need to smoke. But I'm so heartbroken that occasionally I just adjust to it and it just feels like life. And then something happens and I'm face down in a pile of glass again, all cut up and needing to smoke. Here's what happened today. I listened to Revelations by Yoko Ono and Cat Power when it came up on my iPod. I had just worked out hard at the Y and couldn't bring myself to take my iPod off. It had shuffled Marble House by the Knife twice in a row, and I was thinking how it seems like every song on my iPod either came from Lance's mix CDs or went to him on mixes I made. And now I worried that whenever I heard Beirut or Feist or Peter Bjorn and Bjorn, I would only feel so sad because of Lance and never get to listen to my new favorite music ever again. But when the songs came up, I did think of Lance, but it didn't make me feel awful. Because Lance didn't break my heart. It was already broken when he met me. All he did was kick out some of the shards. It hurts, but whatevs. I felt worse. Feel worse. But then Revelations came on, and it was a bad combo. Yoko's sweet lyrics, like she's the mom of the universe, casting love spells upon us all. Like she's God, like she is speaking only to me, blessing my anger, jealousy, greed, sorrow, fuck. And I thought of how I was kissing Lance in the cab of his truck when this song came on his iPod. And the kissing, which had been violent, like an invasion, became so tender, so sweet, like a prayer, like Lance was praying for me with every kiss, speaking to something divine on my behalf. Or he was something divine. He's God, and he gets me, and everything is going to be okay. I'm the best one. He held my face in his hands, and his hands were strong and long and elegant. They were graceful. Lance was graceful, physically, I mean. Not his kisses. They were wild. They were too much at first. I thought, I can't deal with this. What is he trying to do to me? But then I got it, and I liked it. An assault of tongue. And then to feel it slow down with the song, it was like he loved me. And the song came on today, and between Yoko and Lance, I just sat down on the street and cried behind my sunglasses. That was number one. Number two is when I got the email from Lance. It said, I sent you your stuff priority mail with a little note from me, too, that says, I miss you and want to see you. Let me know if you want to hang out. I hope you do. Something like that. It said something like that. I can't remember. I deleted it immediately and burst into tears and had a quick few thoughts. One was, I need to buy cigarettes. The next was, maybe Lance did break my heart. Then the thought I had last night when I was putting my tarot cards away before bed. I am detoxing from letting losers get too close to me. Number three was when my sister called to ask me about my life. Like everyone who loves me, my sister says things like, I think it's really great to be alone for a while. I think you'll really like it. I think you'll get a lot out of it. I think it'll be spiritual, healing, enlightening, revelatory, empowering to be alone. Everyone wants my aloneness to be the best fucking thing that has ever happened to me. Otherwise, it's just sad and pathetic, and I'm crying in public all the time and trolling for sex on Craigslist. It's way better to just imagine me getting totally empowered and learning new amazing things about myself and, just really enjoying me. Honestly, I said to my sister, who I love, who loves me, who is pregnant and on her way to the doctors to be tested for diabetes, who is drinking this special sugary syrup for the test that tastes so good, like Orange Crush, who feels claustrophobic about her giant pregnant stomach, and understands now why humans don't have marsupial pouches, because they just take the babies out if they could. I said to her, really, it just sucks. It just sucks. I go to the spiritual meetings and I read Buddhism books all day, and I go to the gym and get high off the elliptical machine, and I'm sad and I'm lonely and it sucks. Yeah, she says, and I'm glad she doesn't argue. The boy behind the counter at the liquor store is so cute, I forget for a second what a wreck I am. He has a mustache because that's what's happening now. No more beards, just a mustache. Liz, who I'm meeting in an hour, told me to watch for it when we were on the train the other night, and that really cute boy with the handlebar mustache got off. Beards are out, mustaches are in. His arms are perfect and have a single cord of ropey vein running like a river beneath each bicep, like he just worked out wicked hard and is all pumped. There's a dark tattoo tucked under one of his sleeves up by his armpit, but I can't make it out. Bob Marley sings, is it love, is it love, is it love, is it love that I'm feeling? Good question, probably. Upstairs in my shower, washing the grody cigarette stink away, I try to fabricate another reason to go into the liquor store. Too bad I'm an alcoholic. I put serum on my face from a sample Lance gave me. Someone had piled a bunch of really good skincare samples on his desk while he was away in San Diego falling back in love with his old date, and he gave them to me on our breakup because he only uses Dr. Hauschka. He seemed miffed that whoever left him this gift didn't know this about him. Murad? I put Dr. Hauschka rose oil on my face, which seems redder these days, aggravated by crying and smoking, I think. I told my sister on the phone that I was old now, and she laughed and said, you look 25, and I scoffed mournfully and said, not anymore. The breakups have aged me. I put more shit on my face, some crazy stuff from the drugstore that's supposed to be just as good as the $1 million cream from Nordstrom's. All the ladies' magazines say so. Then makeup and a dress from Target and a sweater from the men's department at Barney's that I can't stop wearing since I bought it last week. It was $100. I have to wear it every day to make it worthwhile. It's like my uniform. Partly I'm wearing it until I bump into Lance so he can think, wow, she has the greatest style. I wish I had that sweater. I bet if I hadn't fucked her over, she would have bought it for me. She was going to pay for my top surgery, for Christ's sake. She's so generous. It's insane how generous she is. Yes, that's the word, insane. But she looks so good and is clearly the best one. I'm going back to my beautiful earth-toned room to cry myself to sleep beneath all my tasteful plaid woolen blankets now. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Christy. If we can get these lights gone, perhaps. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to be reading from Bad Habits, this book I've been working on for the last 2 years. And before I start, I actually don't have any scandalous sister spit stories. I was in a very low, not low in a bad way, but just in a very, introverted place in my life. There was some times where people would shake my hand after a performance, and then they'd leave, and I'd look down, and there'd be a bag of weed on my hand, and it was really awesome. But other than that, it was like a spa tour. So I'm going to read from Bad Habits, and it's a book about embracing or just entering a time period in your life when it's about this person who's entering a time period in her life, and she's overcoming an abusive relationship that happened maybe 1.5 years, 2 years in retrospect, and just how that process of healing involves all this destructive behavior and change and really shitty experiences that make healing even more difficult. And I guess all you have to know is it's read in the voice of Carmencita Gutierrez Alonso, who you can refer to as Car, and the abusive ex is named Dominic. Smith is her destructive relationship person she's in a destructive, coke-ridden relationship with. Spike is her best friend. Tatiana is her ex-girlfriend who kind of broke her heart, but she kind of believes that she's going to come back, so she doesn't have to relate her disappearance to the disappearance of her father, which she constantly does. So now I will read about raging on New Year's Eve. While crowd surfing on a bitterly cold New Year's Eve, I spotted Carolina, a burlesque dancer. Carolina waved a wing of white feathers at Marie, Leah, Luis, and myself on that New Year's Eve as the clock struck midnight. Marie and Leah were roughly acquaintances, but dragged us on tow to a strip club near the West Side Highway. Carolina's wings seemed heavier than asphalt, but as delicate as the black curls waving back and forth from her earlobes to her cheeks and against the steel pole at the corner of the stage. Diverting one wing from her left side, Carolina smiled at us as we smiled at the sparkling, dark, bubbly pair of tits on her chest. In a choreographed twirl, Carolina ran a wing across my face, and my intuition called for resurgence, a natural high caused by the chaotic love of a dancer, Carolina of the Bronx. After swallowing enough bourbon to make brave sentences, Louise got in a cab, the dancers put on overcoats and ordered nightcaps, and Marie and Leah introduced me to Carolina. "Do you like girls, Carolina?" I was wasted. "Oh my God, I love girls!" "So, can I take you out for chowder, maybe, and, shrimp cocktails, right now?" "Sure, but I don't date girls. I'm just saying, before I break your heart by mistake." "Oh, damn. Well, I like everything, whatever. We can still eat chowder. I don't know, have a serious talk and, break the hearts of I lose my balance in a classic drunk shuffle, scratch my eyebrows, and face my reflection on the black tile of the sparkling floor. Then I regain composure. Break the hearts of lonely men. Oh, thanks, girl, but perhaps next Thursday. However, it is my cousin's birthday, and she's celebrating over at Dick's, the fag bar. Her name is Sally. You'll totally like her. Dick's, I live with this man, Spike. He works there, you know? He gets guys drunk. He's the bartender there. Oh, that's nice. Yeah, you know, gets his balls sucked behind the counter. You know what I'm saying? Sure. Carolina turns and whispers to Marie, this girl is so fucking inappropriate. I love her. It was swell knowing you, Carolina. I'm sorry to break your heart. I actually have to go right now. I can't hang out with you. I'm sorry. Honey, you need some caffeine. Great, at Dick's, I'll get some kind of caffeinated substance, perhaps. Bye, Marie, Leah, it's been a pleasure. I stumbled out of the door and trotted with wide steps from the west side to the east side to Alphabet City. I was evidently on the 28th day of my menstrual cycle, a time when emotional and sexual energy is all I have the desire to unleash. To dilapidated little corridors that were once meatpacking factories, through the aromas of grilled ribs, sawdust, and smokestacks mingling with one another from sidewalk to sidewalk. Through brick upon brick printed beautifully with distressed advertisements for local products that saw their last run decades ago. With every step through Manhattan, I could smell the gamble, where the dice can land on preservation or destruction. She's ever-changing, like a human. Grasping my wallet that peeked out of the back pocket of my jeans, I looked around and hoped for a less glitzy future. Change was beautiful, I thought, but puritanical success wasn't really made for the devil's playground. Carolina was endangered, like gay bars, like people of color. However, she, like her counterparts, won't sleep to the Song of Surrender, I thought. We're not really going anywhere, I think to myself, crossing Avenue A, 30 feet from Dick's. What are you going to do, man? Make the people illegal, too? Visions of the deportation of anyone not an upper-crust, card-carrying consumer rush me unwelcomingly. That's just a couple streets that are crushed, I guess. I put on my blinders to make my insides feel good. And the local vendors and shops and the freak contingent at the opening night of a chorus line, they just, moved away. And all those gay bars that keep closing down, I don't know, they just disappeared one day. They'll be back. And I walked towards the door of Dick's. New York's like my voodoo doll, baby. I propped myself on a stool to reach the eye level of Myrtle Willoughby, a black-haired queen in red pumps. Oh, really? Myrtle is interested. Yeah, dude, when she gets this fucking slice of integrity, I get a fucking broken heart. Shit hits the fan. Some shit gets between my toes, and I can hardly make it across the fucking living room. Depression is a bitch, girl, but when New York dies, we're all gonna party so fucking hard in hell. Fuck New York dying. I'm going with more forthcoming blows, like Coney Island. So when Coney Island is destroyed, you're gonna go to hell. Fuck yeah, I can smell it. I can smell, like, the fucking grilled ribs and the smoke rings. No one else can. You see, I've got this psychic. Her name is, damn, what? Look at her. That's Sally. It's her birthday. In mid-stare, a glistening massive woman waltzes through the door. It was Rhonda, my roommate. Like a proud mother boasting of her roasted bird on Thanksgiving Day, Rhonda was boasting about her new mink. I could only dream of ever owning such self-assurance. I sunk in dishonor. Honey, I brought you poppers. Rhonda waved a little brown bottle with the word Rush inscribed on a yellow label. She perched down and whispered into my ear. It makes your body free and loose, embracing of anything, big and hard. You get it? Just inhale. Rhonda was a redeemer, but an enabler who repeatedly lit the fuse, and I was a helpless firecracker. Oh, nice. Thanks, Mom. Rhonda put me to shame, but I never told her. I felt a bit more confident as a simpler woman. However, confidence seems so easy if you were 6 feet tall and wore MAC makeup every night. Confidence seems so fast approaching if you sang like Liza Minnelli on purple nightclub stages after smoking acres of the best weed. She made happiness seem feasible. Rhonda, you really make happiness seem feasible. Oh, honey, I'm just blown out. Rhonda was also humble. Oh, that reminds me. I reached for the telephone to call Smith so I can later have sex and possibly fall in love with him. I walk into a quiet corner where the bricks resembled burning coal from a string of red Christmas lights adorning a framed photograph of Freddie Mercury. I squat on the ground and listen to a vibrant moaning, exiting the crack beneath the door that read employees only. I love poppers, yelled a man who quite possibly got fucked very well for the first time. "I love you," yelled another man who was either on copious amounts of cocaine or had ran that mile I thought was impossible this day and age. He actually fell in love. As I begin to dial, I tumble haplessly into a deep sinking longing for blow. A desire to construct happiness envelops me, and I forget that true love may exist somewhere with whomever and whatever caliber of love it may be, while I sit here nose burning in surrender. A subtle rage entangles me as the moans become louder and louder. The men sound joyous, and I perch myself on the carpet like a sour voyeur without anything much better to do. Placing my fists on my chin, I look down and close my eyes. Thoughts are sickening, and my brain vegetates into a state of unrest. I don't picture these possibly sexy, pleasant employees enjoying one another's company. I just picture Dominic. Dominic would have never gone to jail if I ever told the police what he had done to my relationship with sex and with my relationship with love. Manipulation isn't illegal. Dominic wasn't illegal, the way so many people in New York City obviously were. Society has always been so bad at deciding wrong from right, because according to the law, I'm just some bipolar junkie who happened to have been sexually assaulted once or twice and later mind-fucked by some crass romantic I shouldn't have trusted anyway. Perhaps I'm just pulling the abuse card in order to justify my irresponsible lifestyle, blah, 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 blah. I knew society was wrong anyway, because you knew something was fucked when Manhattan's finest need more proof of harm to validate the illegality of domestic violence than they need to justify the harm of a medicinal plant that can be healthily consumed in moderation. I couldn't afford a lawyer anyway if such laws on manipulation even existed in America. Dominic maneuvered his smile through the cracks in human rights and won over confidence through sly, disinterested gestures and little forged I'm sorries. In the past, trying to provide support to and receiving support from people who had been in violent relationships made this healing process so much easier for me. But now I was gone from that community, and a scar is a scar, I thought out loud. I rubbed my eyes, trying to wipe off memory, the way I rubbed my eyes to wake out of an out-of-body experience from taking too big of a hit off of the now-deceased Consuela, Rhonda's bong. The little bottle of poppers rolls from my pocket to the carpet and lands label up. Rush, it said, telling my body tastefully to move on with a kind-hearted spirit. Poppers aren't very false, like cocaine, and men like Dominic will never be illegal the way poppers are, or, at least frowned upon. Come here, darling. The door opens as bodies tumble like laundry onto the carpeted hallway where I conversed with myself. How many people are having orgasms right now? I thought in a flash, where running into the stalls to rub one out seemed perfectly appropriate. I pressed my ear against the carpet to feel the vibration of a Pretenders song that played in the main lounge. Girl, that was so outrageous. I see you're next. Spike perched himself next to me after waltzing, rosy-cheeked and dry, out of the storage room. No, I'm just here holding these poppers, thinking I'll ever want to kiss someone without anything up my fucking nostrils. The usual self-deprecation. I told Spike, and he held me closely. I cried a little, and he tried to make me laugh. Our sweat intermingled, mine reeking of pesto and oil, his of sexual misconduct. We smiled at one another, then at the little bottle of poppers as if it were a child of our very own. Spike took a whiff and laughed. So now I'm going to fast forward a bit to, this is right after Smith dumps Carr, and Carr is on her way home on a bus, and she's talking to Louise, who's her other roommate. And I guess the only little precursor information you need to understand this is, part of the effect of this abusive relationship that Carr was in had to do with disenabling her relationship with her vagina. And part of the healing process is reestablishing that relationship. And Carr is Cuban, just like me, surprisingly. And she was raised with very rigid rules that didn't really assist sexual progress at all. So, this is just like this reinventing her body after being alive for 22 years, which is kind of a process that most people go through when they're about 12. But, most people go through it a million times in their life, too. So, girl, you would have found that kid boring anyway. Don't sweat it at get home already. Louise consoled me on the telephone after an offhand comment on Smith slipped from my mouth as I rode the bus home the day after we severed ties. Damn, what a fucking drama queen. The guy sitting next to me told another guy as they overheard my conversation. I tried to ignore them. I just miss getting to bang every night. I don't know, it was so nice to just bang all the time. Whatever. Oh, girl, I'll see you later. Louise laughed and hung up the phone. Damn, now she's such a hoe. The same man remarks to another man according to the rules of turn-of-the-century etiquette. I always tried to convince myself that the double standard between men and women in regards to overtly expressing your loin's desires could not have survived here in Brooklyn in 2004. But in fact, I always felt someone watching me from a hidden scaffolding, laughing as slut and whore crept off the mouths of pedestrians. I gazed upon street lamp and vinyl signs, taxi rims and dreary-eyed vendor, and hoped for something in my city to say, yes, Virginia, fuck. As I walked to my front door, cozy smells danced like lines up my nostrils between the beef empanadas on a mobile grill to my skull. I never really knew Cuban sexuality, I thought, placing food and sex, my two most common bodily desires, together in thought. I knew only the Cuban repression of sex, and for most of my life, all I could see were tumbleweeds on the road to sexual self-discovery. Damn, I guess I'm glad I bailed from Miami, I guess. Oh yeah, this takes place the first year she leaves Miami after living there for 22 years. Picking my nose as if gold sat in my temples, I thought of the parts of my blood that were, however, constructed of a gorgeous revolution. Made of tropical plants and percussion instruments, my blood made me proud, almost arrogant. Family reunions were moments to digress from my atypical life and reinvest plentifully in my culture, without political drama and irresponsible men. Authority in my family was possessed by women. Out in Miami, Cubans were both proud Latin immigrants, the children thereof, and obnoxious right-wing conservatives, assimilated to a T. But whether liberal or fundamentalist, rich or poor, the norm was to choose abstinence over condoms. So either way, I was fucked. Whether it was Catholicism or bad taste that developed the sexual psyche of Cuban Americans coddled, I felt everyone should just get the fucking hell over it. I know there's no such thing as a flawless civilization, but I nonetheless thought the entire Caribbean was spoon-fed genetic glory by the tree gods of Mesopotamia before the plates beneath each island shifted into individual territories. I just adore those roots so fucking much, I thought to myself. The more distant I feel from Miami, the less of a human I feel, no matter how accepted I was by any other American city. Because one thing that all these Cuban Americans still had in common was the fact that going to visit our distant relatives wasn't always financially possible, or let alone a lighthearted family vacation. I don't like the embargo. I don't like Fidel. I've never really liked any president ever. I don't like any government that at any point has criminalized human nature, sexually or ethnically. But governments change. I try to remain hopeful. And I guess for now I'm just stuck here in America with an empty wallet and no easy way of contacting the people from my motherland. Because in the 1960s, some assholes couldn't shut up, suck each other off, and prioritize human rights over their lofty dreams of world domination. During adolescence in Miami, I thought to myself, we had our Christmas lights on all year. We ate dinner at 9 p.m. We mopped the floor with el palo de trapear instead of a mop. Men didn't really wear shirts. People played dominoes at 2 a.m., and despite the outrage exiting our constant mouths, we just wanted to survive, piss broke, all right, well off, or however the way you can get there, or wherever you can get. It was nice, humble, special, but for some reason, it still felt like the only female in my entire family who was as in love with my culture as I was with getting off. Instead of investing healthy approaches to express my overactive libido as a teenager, I inherited the tact you'd expect from a society where giving away condoms was frowned upon. I developed the nerve to combat my desires by joking senselessly of sluts. I paraded internally, self-loathingly my distaste for sluts. Self-pity developed when my ethnic group affirmed my grotesqueness based on how many dicks I've sucked and the fact that all genders aroused me. Self-pity inhabited my skull when even members of my supposed progressive and alternative scene assumed the same shit. Eventually, I realized that functioning libido was a sign of good health, and embracing things such as safe sex, with or without a ball and chain, was healthy. And if it ain't your bag, it ain't your bag. Just don't diss my bag. And most people, honestly, want to fuck. Self-deprecation waned as I turned the key and entered my house. I'll forever be a tumbling byproduct of the aforementioned refutation, but for now I digress. And though my friends think I'm all right, I would have liked for my own soul to approve of my hormones a bit more generously. The assimilation I felt like I've undergone to assist my otherworldly desires burned a little hole the size of a cranberry in the Cuban matter that was left in my soul. Remembering the present tense and easing up into my bedroom, I thank the unmentionable heavens for basing my American assimilation on perversion and promiscuity as opposed to Republican conservatism. And while the Cuban right was down there ruling South Florida, I stayed here in Brooklyn where I had Christmas lights on all year anyway, and I hardly wore a shirt, whether or not I was a man. My fantasies of revitalizing vaginal orgasms has by now finally come to pass. But that afternoon in March, it sat there, defeated and in shambles on the floor of my bedroom. The fabricated ambition of love burned me beneath the wings of the cocaine angels, yet my bad habits burned too. And while the sex ended, the exploration of biology and vulnerability never really could. It was almost spring. A month-long cocaine low had passed. I had finally begun saving money after consecutive splurges, and I felt detached from the battered little journey with my little pink seashell that lay between my thighs, a journey I was so set on concluding. Sex wasn't going to be a vision quest, but an activity to get lost in. I wanted to tend to that G-spot more than ever, and for once in adulthood, my entrails felt 16. The season of rebirth was tumbling over, and I could hear the pussycats in heat pacing frantically up and down Humboldt Avenue. Birds, roommates, neighbors, rats and pigeons found harbor in walls, as did circus freaks, criminals, and the elderly, who were all in unison, rejoicing for the season of sexual revival, where everyone's survival was divined by the caliber of orgasm. Tiny hints of foliage peeked through the stems of the trees blossoming from out of the concrete dugout behind the door in my bedroom. Drafts of cold still exited the cracks around the door, so I laid on my bed and hid my wilted body beneath a couple of sheets. Thank you. Are these for us?
Can I just make the curtains do something because I want to? This is like somebody graduated or something, but we don't know from what and who did yet already or something. So I don't know, I was just thinking the Sister Spit is the only movement I ever really belonged to, you know, because it's sort of a gang of completely, I don't know, brilliant losers or something. It was sort of very special, and I guess I'm. Here I'm making a graduation speech, and I'm going to stop it right now. So anyway, I love Cristy and I love Michelle, and I'm glad we're reading here tonight. And I also love Los Angeles, and I know I sent like a really morose, well, it wasn't morose. I sent an email to friends who live in LA saying, "Don't cry for me, Los Angeles," because I sort of thought I lived here, and then I didn't live here, and it's been very confusing. And it's actually hard to be in LA in a way, because I have that compulsive thing of wherever you are, you think I should be living here. And I think it's not, I don't know about you guys, but I don't have that constantly, but I go through periods where I feel that way all the time, and it's very confusing. I'm definitely in that now. And I also, I'm on a babble streak. I know I sent out a mysterious email like there was some strange thing going on, like I had a sex change or something, and I haven't. I mean, it would be good if I had, but I haven't. Or I've just had a change. I changed sexes, but it's the same one. I went all the way around. I turned, you know. But I've had a publishing drama, which was that I was on the on-ramp of a book coming out in the fall, and then I had some weirdness with the publisher. And I think I have come to a point in my life when something feels weird. I don't know, but I've spent years, something feels weird, so then I'll hang out there for 2 years and think it's still weird. So my new approach is if it feels weird, then it probably is weird. So I withdrew the manuscript, so now I don't have a book coming out in the fall. So it's very confusing. So I have this like glowing new baby book all ready to go, and so something else is going to happen to it, but it's not going to come out in the fall from those people. So I'm going to read a little piece from it. So this is a May-December reading, but I'm May and December. That's another thing I'm going through is I've spent years dating 28-year-old women, and for a while I was one of them. And then I realized that they were having I'm 58, so I realized they were having a Saturn return, and so was I. And I didn't realize you have a second one, and if you live for 28 more years, you have a third one. So I thought that maybe in my second Saturn return, I would stop dating people who were in there first. So I'm just having a May-December affair with myself these days. So anyway, so this novel that's not coming out now is called The Inferno, and it's about the hell of being a female poet. And it's in 3 parts, and the third part is purgatory, and that's the career of the poet. And it takes the form of a grant application. So this is the big, right? This long begging letter, which is your life, you know? It ends. I know. I saw. So I was a college. I've been ending everything lately. I was a college professor for 5 years in San Diego, and then I quit. So I'm now. This week I'm in Maine at the 70s Poetry Conference. So then I flew here today to read with these guys, and then I'm flying back tomorrow morning to be back in Maine with the 70s poetry. I don't know why I'm doing this. But so I'm with these people having dinner last night, and this girl said, "So you quit your job?" And I said, "Yeah." And she goes, "Well, what are you going to do?" She you're like, she goes, "You're like, I don't know how old you are, but what are you going to do?" And I just looked at her. I said, "Well, I know what I'm going to die is what I'm going to do." Right? And there was this guy sitting to my right, and he was actually 70. I said, "What are you going to do, Tom?" He goes, "I'm going to die." So we're all sitting there like terrifying these younger people at the table who like have this other belief. So I've got a career plan. I'm going to die. So the final section of my novel, The Inferno, coincides with Dante's Purgatorio, and in it I concern myself with the career of the poet. I've named this section Drops because of an experience I had when I first began my life as a writer. I read an ad in the New York Times looking for people to pick apples upstate during harvest. At the time, I was making a meager living working at a bar, so I decided to get up the next morning and go to Milton, New York, to find work. I figured at the very least the trip would give me something to write about. I was 24 or 25. I set my alarm and overslept and missed the first bus. I refused to speed up and was sitting in the tub smoking a cigarette when I realized I had missed the second one as well. I got on the 10:45. I sat next to a woman who slipped out her Newports at the same time I produced my pack of Gaulois. "Where'd you get those?" she asked. "Here," I shrugged, indicating the city, and we both laughed. She lived upstate. I told her what I was doing, and she nodded silently. "I'm going to Marlboro," she said. "Milton's right after. You just get on right after me." And she gave me a protective nudge. When she got off the bus, she performed an elaborate mime with her face, winking and pointing to let me know it was soon. Since I was already looking out the window in a continual dream, her excessive help was actually crucial. I did get off, and I walked into a little store right there. "Excuse me," I said to the man behind the counter who wore a baseball cap. There was a woman standing behind him, and she had on a tight, slightly tattered cowboy shirt. Both of them were smoking. "Uh-huh," said the guy. But his body didn't move. "I'm looking to get work picking apples," I told him. My hair had recently been cut short, and that morning I had put on a light blue work shirt and a pair of jeans, and I wore deck shoes on my feet, red ones. I probably looked more like I was going to Nantucket than to work in the harvest. I probably believed I was going to be singing folk songs for a few weeks. I wouldn't make a lot of money, but I would have a different experience of work. "You a boy or a girl?" The guy stubbed his cigarette out and grinned at the woman. Her face was impassive. "A girl," I replied. At this, the woman decided to talk to me. "You'd probably do your best going to Hepworth's. They're up the road, but Conn's is even closer, and they hire people too. They're the first fruit stand, about a mile down the road." "Thanks," I said. "Maybe I'll get a drink." I walked over to the cooler and pulled out a tab. "I don't know where you're going to stay, however." Then as an afterthought, she added, "There's plenty of work." "Stay?" I figured I'd stay with the workers. "Well, most of the women who pick during the season are local girls, so they just go home. My sister does that. Most of the men in town already have jobs. At that, she turned and elbowed her sidekick and began talking to him. And some of them don't care. Jamaicans do it. Lots of Jamaican fellows get brought in and they house them. I never heard of housing any women. I struggled with my tab trying to open it. I used the tail of my work shirt and then it was a little wet and gross. Well, okay. You go to Hepworth's. Just down the road, the man chimed in and smiling, and his teeth were bad. Then I was standing outside thinking they felt mean and my idea was over. However, there I was, and I had to do something. I had just come back from Europe about 2 years ago, and I still thought of my life as traveling. My life in New York was traveling. In Europe, we learned that our trip would have been better if we actually were doing something, if we were buying doorknobs or really liked art, really knew it or cared, something. But I had fallen into a thing now, writing, more or less, so I just had to fill in the details all the time while I was doing it, to make it real. I usually moved around with envelopes and paper and stamps and was likely to stop at a cafe or a coffee shop and shoot off a letter to my friend in Boston about what was happening to me now. I was thinking of him while I was walking down the road. It hadn't occurred to me yet that this was my life. It was professional. Want a ride, said a guy in a mustard-colored van. Okay, I said, stepping up. I'm going to Cons, I said. It's right. He grinned broadly and moved the van's flat steering wheel like a boat. He had a cigarette in his mouth. I know where Cons is. So what are you doing here? He was looking up and down at my legs. I could really feel it. I put that in my letter. He thinks I'm a fag. Picking apples. I don't know if there's anywhere to stay for a feller like you. What's a young guy like you doing up here? You should be in the city, meeting some girls. My chest, my crotch. He's really looking me over. He had a hula girl on his dashboard. I gave her a little shove. I'm glad I did that. He leaned across to let me out. Good luck. I don't know where you're going to stay, but I guess you can always try. I'm thinking, try what? Thanks. I waved straight ahead as I jumped down. That felt weird. Do you hire people to pick apples? I was in a slightly nice fruit stand. The man was working there, couldn't seem to focus on where I was standing. He wiped his mouth with his sleeve as if he was eating something. Which people? Excuse me, I'm just finishing my lunch. Me, I want to pick apples. Where are you from? The city. The city. And you want to pick. We're all set. We get our local girls. We're not that big an operation. You should go to Hepworth's. You know Hepworth's? I do. You do. Well, I heard of them. That's good, he said, returning to his sandwich. Yeah, go to Hepworth's. I'll do that. Do you have any of that maple candy? I was thinking when I went to the country with my mother on Sundays, we would get that maple sugar candy. I love that candy. No, we don't do that here. Indian corn, apples. You want some apples? He indicated with his back, lots of apples. I was standing outside lighting a cigarette, and then I was walking down the road. Milton was pretty depressing. I actually kind of hated Galois. They were worse than cigarettes in that only one a day tasted good. And you had to get everything right. Be fed, feel well, have coffee, some sugar, and not be sick. Then a Galois would taste really good. Mostly it was like all the acidy parts of your mouth would come screaming forward, and you'd be sucking on that. It was much more about smell than looking at things. You were bringing this smell from someplace else into the world. And then the blue. I love that deep blue. The little drawing of Hermes on the pack. It made me feel safe. It was interesting that all those gods survived as commercials. That was cool. I loved those gods when I was a kid. Anything but Catholic. Puff. I didn't even go inside Hepworth's. We house our men over there. The girls are local. But sure, you can start on Monday. We don't pick on Saturday. I guess you could stay at a motel. Monday at 8. We'll see you then. Whenever I keep walking through something that I know isn't going to happen, I feel like I have a really thin mask on. This was a hard day because I spent $19 on the bus, and now I had to get a motel room. They told me how much I got for picking a bushel of apples, and maybe it was $20, but the room was $19, and so I would basically be spending every cent on rent, and I already had an apartment in New York that cost $160, so it would be like I would be paying to pick apples. Not only that, but losing money, and part of what I'd wanted was to make money, and then maybe write an article about it for the Village Voice. I needed to make money. I remember in Europe, kids turning their noses up at us eating escargot, going to French restaurants because they were living on granola. It was always these same kids who wired home for money. I was not them. And I wasn't leaving my home in the morning to pick apples. I was not a local woman with a child. I didn't know how the men from Jamaica got here. I did not come on a plane. I did not come on a boat. I paid for my own bus ticket. I did this to myself. There was a bar next to the motel. I remember sitting in the bathroom, which was knotty pine and cold, with the window open. If I wasn't writing to Jack, I just felt like a fool. I looked at myself like my family would see me. I didn't look like a woman or a man, and I didn't live here or anywhere. In Hepworth's, I asked, what are drops? Beautiful apples were arranged in baskets all over the store, and then there were these other ones, actually fatter, in baskets to the side with no price on them. Just what it sounds like. No one picks them. They just fall. Take some. They're good apples. People just don't like the idea, but they're good. I stuffed 3 in my bag. I took 4. After the bar, I went and got another 3. It was getting dark in Milton, and the bar felt a little scary. I didn't tell people anymore that I was there to pick apples. By the time Monday came, I would have been broke. I was kind of broke now, after lunch and breakfast and 2 bus tickets and 3 drinks, sitting at the bar writing letters. I was lying on my skinny bed in Rogers Motel, where I wouldn't live, and I ate the apples one by one. That was my dinner, except for the peanuts in the bar. I was thinking it was 560 calories. I was sick of them by the time I had 3, but there was nothing else to do, so I kept biting and swallowing, and I got them all down, and finally I fell asleep. I just don't know why they would have advertised if there was no place to live. I fell asleep thinking about that. That excites you, right? Well, this is going to excite you even more. So this is a little essay. There's this book called Live Through This, and it was this woman, her name is, what is her name? Who did this book? Sabrina. So Sabrina started emailing me, and I would bump into her the street, and she would say, "Are you going to give me an essay for this magazine?" I was like, and it's about people who almost killed themselves drinking and drugging and stuff. And so now I guess you're supposed to tell stories about how horrible you were. And I feel like I have told those stories a lot. And so I just felt like I was sort of sick of doing that. So she kept asking, and I kept saying, sure, sure, sure. And then, but it was great how she kept asking, because I feel like there's this thing now where somebody was telling me lately, what is it called? Razorfish? Do you know Razorfish? It's like this advertising website, and it kind of controls all the ads and things about how the media runs and everything. And somebody I know was writing a piece about Razorfish, and they said the thing now is everything's really soft sell, like hard sell is really bad, And I feel like I might be kind of hard sell person. And I think that I grew up kind of hard sell. If I wanted something, I would keep pestering you and pestering you and pestering you, and people would give it to you. But I think now people, if they want something, they just email you and say, "Can I have a story?" And you don't send it to them. And then 2 months later, a year later, the book comes out, and I'm like, "Hey, I wanted to be in that book," but they only asked you once, electronically, And if somebody wants you to recommend them, this is totally general. Somebody wants a recommendation, they just send an email out to all the recommenders at once saying, "Hey, would you write about me?" And I get really resentful because I used to have to call people up and grovel and, be humiliated. And they didn't even have answering machines. You have to keep calling and calling. So I feel like I come from a hard sell begging generation. And so, but this girl begged. So I finally thought of something that I could write about, which is that I don't drink and I'm sober. And one of the first things that happened to me when I got sober is I thought, oh, fuck, I'm going to be flossing my teeth the rest of my life, And so that's what this is about. So I want to read a little bit about, it's called Live Through That. And I think she was horrified initially when I sent it to her. This is not the story she had in mind. I just want to be frank about what you will be really living through. You'll be living through through flossing, years of it, both in the mirror and away from it, both with girlfriends and alone. Girlfriends will be really excited that you floss your teeth because they should. And they think it's really inspiring that you do that, and they will ask if they can do it with you because it's easier that way, bumping their hips and thighs against you while you keep peering at yourself under the shitty bathroom light. They will even talk glowingly over drinks with their friends about the really diligent way you have of flossing, and then the little brushes and how you rinse and how you look, and then you look at their friends who look kind of weirded out, and you'll be thinking, you're just making me sound really old. I mean, why do you think I flossed my teeth for 15 minutes every night? My father lost his teeth at 40, and then he died at 44. Before I decided I also wanted to live, I was utterly convinced that I would never lose my teeth, and I would have tooth loosening and tooth loss dreams all my life. So in my 20s, when I had never gone to therapy, I decided that I would always privilege the dentist over the therapist, and that I was really getting a 2-in-1 service when I went to the dentist, but still when I drank, I would often pass out before I could floss. Then I stopped drinking. I found myself in my 30s leaning into the mirror one night, flossing away, and I thought, fuck, this is what I live for, to floss. Well, yeah. I mean, I don't know about anyone else, but when I found myself at the age of 33 no longer spending the majority of my day getting sort of hammered, I was, to say the least, perplexed. I never thought I wanted to die. That was not the point of my constant drinking. It wasn't a thought at all. Because there was such a thing as drunkenness, I aspired to it. I took it, it was there. Moderate friends would wince and even suggest I was self-destructive, but that didn't sound right to me. Things would happen, that's all. I didn't mean them to be. It was surrounding circumstances to alcoholism, which was what my entire family was too. My father didn't mean to make me watch him die, it just happened. But this next act, the living, this was conscious. This was a choice. Or that's what I grappled with for a very long time. Do I want this? Being sober made me want to die. Because I was swarming with feelings about being a dyke, about being poor, about aging, about my inability to connect, about what a great poet I was. But what if, I don't know, what if I can't write anymore? Then what if nobody will publish my work? None of these worries are particularly interesting or unique, but I found myself in a state of endless worry. And who is this who can't turn the faucet of anxiety off with a drink or a drug? And yet I had a simple urge to preserve what I've got. To tell you the truth, if I am feeling anxious at night, I sometimes think it's a good idea to go to bed without brushing my teeth. No face washing, nothing. And it feels kind of wild. And I've slept with women, and I've been friends with people who have shared that their secret decadence is the occasional tumble into the sack without brushing or flossing. So I do that too. But you know what? It's actually more interesting to floss. Because I face my face, myself, and I spend about 7 minutes first flossing, then the little brushes, then brushing the backs of the 4 molars, then the insides of up and down, then the front and the sides on the outside. I examine my gums. And uncannily, at some point during this ritual, I begin to feel better. It's like washing my car, and I never wash my car. It's the most intimate expression of care I know. And if I don't do it, my teeth hurt the next day. Because, get this, when you age, your teeth spread a little. So food gets caught in the cracks. And if you have bone decay, and I do, the food gets jammed down there, and almost instantly it produces pain. And miraculously, though that pain produces panic, and I begin to fear I will lose a tooth, what actually happens is that after I do a really good flossing and brushing the next night, and maybe a little gargling with peroxide, which is really kind of a trip, your mouth gets sudsy and greasy. Don't worry, it goes away. The pain subsides, and I did it. Me! To tell you the truth, good tooth care is more like repairing a bike, which I also can't do. Okay, so in all these years of tooth care, some other things have happened, and I mean I have a mouthful of caps. I have fallen, and teeth have cracked of their own accord. Well, usually I bite a cherry pit, or a date, or a kernel of corn, or a chicken bone. Snap! A tooth cracks, and you have spent $1,000. So my mouth is full of these perfectly stained off-white piano keys that I meticulously clean every night. But still, in all these years of care, through a squadron of dentists, all in New York, and in New York still, I will not go to a California dentist. I'm not having it. All the dentists have said for years, one day you're going to have to go to a periodontist. That seemed like the end. Yet my mother, who is in her 80s and has all her teeth, she has gone to a periodontist. How was it, Mom? Awful, she says. But then I imagine her biting into some food. We are usually eating when we talk, and our love of food is certainly part of the issue here. Biting and eating, that's the story. Luckily, when the day came, and really the day comes when you have the money, I began to explore going to a periodontist. I've gone several rounds of meet and greets, and one guy in La Jolla was a monster. He made an obscene video of me with my lips pulled back, and the damage was revealed in some fashion that was worse than the most humiliating pornography, worse than dead. And even when he was giving me instructions to get my lips and jaw into the horrifying poses, he said, what did he say? Good girl or that a girl? Something that sounded like I was an animal. And it was going to cost thousands of dollars, so much money. And he would be pulling and restoring. I would have a mouthful of living false, not teeth gone, but something cold. This is kind of the end of my story, or the beginning of the second act, or maybe the third, because I did something I've never done before. I am not middle class. I don't have sharp perceptions about personal investment and bourgeois self-esteem, or didn't then. But I had heard about this thing, which is getting a second opinion. I don't even know how I approached it. I guess I went to my dentist in New York, who I love, Michael Chang, on 2nd Avenue across from the movie theater. I had another dentist before Michael Chang in the exact same location. It was Chuck. and he was great too. And he sold Michael Chang his practice. So I stayed with the building and the view from that particular dental chair. I allowed myself to be part of somebody's practice that was sold. I'm trying to give you an extended picture of what I'm living through. Michael Chang recommended another man, Michael Lanzetta. I just want to say here privately, these guys are gay. These are gay dentists. And I just didn't want to say it in print because I think they're like closeted gay dentists, but they're like fantastic. I will only say that I enjoy these men and trust them with my mouth and my body. Incidentally, I am 57. I just want to say something different has happened about living in the past few years. Not only am I not self-destructive, nor am I ambivalent about wanting to live, nor am I unaware that this, all the time I've spent telling you about toothbrushing, this is actually my life, my time. One's life is literally that, their duration. And I've seen friends die young, much younger than me, and they keep dying, my friends, and one day I will too. And how I feel right now about that is a little sad because I want to live so much and I have all my time and have all my time and do so many things. So I have to attend to the thing in front of me because if I am not focused, I can get overwhelmed by my desire to do everything still. Yet as they say, the clock is ticking and I won't get to it all. I can't. And the impossibility of that choice, of the everything when I was young, that choice made me be a poet because I could have some purchase on everything and do a little bit of it all day. And it's essentially the same now, and I have made the same choice again when I decided to do what's in front of me, but I probably can do the other things too, and I will. I just don't want to talk about them here. So Dr. Lanzetta was recommended to me by Michael Chang, and he quoted me a price like a quarter of the animal doctor in La Jolla. And he was much less invasive in his plan, and I was impressed that I had held out for something simpler and more comfortable. It was a unique choice in my life to hold out as if I could be like that, to trust my own no. I think I'll wait. So in the face of the mountain of time I've lived, and in the eye of the mystery of what remains, I feel quietly smart. And I open my mouth widely and slowly tonight, and I brush. I examine, I grin. I'm a mechanic now. Doctor, friend. I grin like a skull, but it's cool. That skull is my friend.